A mom thought her 3-year-old boy was stung by a wasp, then realizes truth why his body turns blue. Mom thought her 3-year-old boy was stung by a wasp, then realizes truth why his body turns blue after playing outside. A mom thought her little boy had gotten stung by a wasp. Then she took a closer look, noticed his body turning blue, and frantically called for help. Elizabeth Dorgarden is the mother of a rambunctious little boy named Christopher. Like other kids his age, the typical 3-year-old boy loves being outdoors, from picnics to games. He simply loves to be outside where they can run and play without a care in the world. However, there can be danger lurking in your own backyard, and although we want our kids to have the freedom to be carefree, we must know the threats they could stumble across. As 3-year-old Christopher Norgarden played outside one warm day. His mother Elizabeth learned this lesson the hard way. Sadly, it was the toddler who painfully paid the price when he experienced firsthand that being barefoot while outdoors comes with its fair share of risks, some that can even be fatal. There's always the risk of stepping on something sharp or even the occasional wildlife, such as a wasp or a bee. So when her son came running to her, tears streaming down his face, Elizabeth didn't think it would be anything too serious. Initially, she never imagined that she was about to face one of the most dramatic events that she ever had experienced. She and her boys were visiting family. Elizabeth told NRK, recalling the day that her life was turned upside down. Then Christopher began to cry a little and climbed onto my lap. We thought he'd been stung by a wasp first, scratched himself on a branch, she explained. He'd stepped on something all right, and it was wildlife too, but it was far worse than a wasp. She soon realized he hadn't been stung, but rather bitten. 15 minutes. After a crying Christopher crawled onto his mother's lap, his foot began to swell and turn blue. That's what Elizabeth quickly called emergency services. The ambulance and helicopter arrived quickly. They kept saying it was a viper snake bite, and we were transported to the hospital. Elizabeth relayed Christopher was promptly given antivenom and initially began to show signs of improvement. But then he took a sudden turn for the worse. He'd begun to bleed internally from his intestines, and what started as some bruising on his foot and ankle was about to spread to the rest of his body, and practically all of them turned blue and appeared bruised. When doctors measured Christopher's blood volume, it was less than half of what it should have been, and he had quickly lost weight, going from 44 pounds down to 33. He was in a fight for his life, all because of a simple mistake. It took nearly 2 weeks of being hospitalized, but thankfully Christopher was eventually well enough to go home. He survived, but his battle was extremely difficult. As the picture here shows now, his story is serving as a warning for others. While he responds to the viper's bite, children typically are most vulnerable and at risk for deadly reactions. This goes for all venomous snakes, not just vipers, so know which ones are prevalent where you live. In addition, all snakes are much more active during warmer weather, when more people are also out in nature. Therefore, there's a greater chance of encountering one, so it's important to wear shoes outside, especially for kids who are playing and not necessarily watching where they're walking. This is definitely something that Elizabeth now pays closer attention to as a parent and requires of her children. Although Christopher's taken the horrific experience well playing outside shortly after returning home, Elizabeth is vowed to be much more cautious. I have much more respect for vipers now, and I'll ensure that my kids wear boots when they go out in areas with high grass in the future, she said, knowing that during cooler months, snakes tend to hide more, but when it's warm, they could be anywhere enjoying the sun's rays. Just like you, so it doesn't hurt to take a quick look around the yard before letting the kids run loose. Remember, not only should we be respectful of wild animals, we must also be cautious of them. Christopher's lucky, since this could have ended much differently now. Others can learn from this common mistake that we all make. No one wants to lose a child simply because they didn't feel like fighting with them to put their shoes on. You never know what's in the grass. Don't find out the hard way.